Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Unlimited. Today, we are talking about toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing. These topics have gotten a lot of attention recently for very good reason, and they are near and dear to my heart. And actually, the more I dig into them, the more I hear people talk about them, the more I talk about them, the more I realize that engaging these topics and the problematic nature of them and what we need to be doing about it so that we are growing in a healthy way, or actually I should say so that we are actually growing, is a core component of what my work is all about. Making a point not to have that block growth. It's something that I've seen in my past, which I will be sharing about in this episode. And it's a huge issue in my industry. So I thought it was a good time for us to have a little chat about it. What we will be digging into is, what is toxic positivity? Why does this matter? And what does healthy positivity look like? So how can you shift from leaning on toxic positivity and utilizing healthy positivity so that you can grow and move forward, intentionally living as fully in life as possible? So, without further ado, let's get started. Hey there, I'm Valerie Friedlander, Certified Life Business Alignment Coach, and this is Unlimited. This podcast bridges the individual and the societal, scientific and spiritual, positive and negative, nerdy and no, there's just a lot of nerdy. Come on board and let's unlock a life that's as badass as you are. The other day, my husband and I were watching a show on Hulu called Staged with David Tennant and Michael Sheen. And it's a very well done show about actors rehearsing a play during the pandemic when they can't be on stage, or I should say, attempting to rehearse a play. It's a comedy, and just very much resonates with pandemic life. And in episode 5, entitled Ulysses, Adrian Lester guest stars. And in this episode, he shares about a dream that he has where he's on stage and he's trying to scream, but he can't, and ropes are wrapping around him, and then the audience is attacking him, and he has to fight them off with his hands. And David asks him, what did you do in real life about this dream? And Adrian says, I talked to my life coach about it. What did he say? And Adrian says, he said it was connected to a repressed feelings of powerlessness and to just ignore it, breathe it in, and breathe it out. And they're like, did it work? He's like, it worked. Anytime I feel sad, angry, or powerless, I just ignore it. Or sometimes I go for a little run. And they asked him, how far do you run? He goes, about 20 miles a day. It's like, yeah, absolutely. And I see a lot of kind of spoofs on life coaching these days, because in my industry, there is a lot of that toxic positivity. Not everyone. There are a lot of awesome life coaches that eschew toxic positivity. The program that I was trained in, IPEC, was very good about the acknowledgement and validation and honoring emotions. But there's a reason why this is joked about. The health and wellness industry has a lot of this. Just don't go there. Just be positive and you'll attract positivity. And this is a huge issue. So before we dig into why it's a huge issue, first of all, let's talk about what it is. What is toxic positivity? So toxic positivity is designed by the psychology group as the excessive and ineffective overgeneralization of a happy, optimistic state across all situations. Anytime you have overgeneralization, it's probably going to be a problem. So, where does this term come from? I did some digging to see where the term toxic positivity came from, because I actually don't know. I have used it before it became popular, as in this past year. It became very popular. You see a lot of articles during 2020 about toxic positivity, but I wasn't seeing a lot before that, though I know it was around. Digging in further, I'd also heard the term spiritual bypassing, and that term has been around for a while, at least since early 2000s. It was coined by John Wellwood, the prominent psychotherapist and author in transpersonal psychology, who used the phrase who defined the phrase as spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep personal, emotional, unfinished business, to shore up a shaky sense of self, or to belittle basic needs, feelings, and developmental tasks. So the intention of this spiritual bypassing is to enjoy life more. But the reality is that it's a type of defense mechanism that is used to avoid dealing with painful emotions, such as loneliness, grief, shame, self-loathing, anger. The ones that aren't so fun to deal with, but have important messages to give us. Maybe not the surface messages, but they're telling us something about what's going on for us, and they deserve to be looked at. Avoiding these feelings with toxic positivity, using anything to avoid these feelings, to coat them over, to block them out, is toxic. Whether it is spiritual tools, whether it is drugs, whether it is work or shopping or sex or alcohol or whatever, blocking ourselves from experiencing our emotions and understanding and engaging them is always going to be toxic. And by toxic, I mean poisonous and harmful to your growth, to your relationships, to your ability to be a full, whole person and make choices in the world, because so much energy gets poured into avoiding the emotions that need to be heard. Because again, they're there for a reason. So spiritual bypassing may seem less messy, less ugly on the surface, but it's still problematic because it's still a way of avoiding things happening in our life. Spiritual bypassing also describes how spirituality and its practices can be used to invalidate or explain away people's lived experiences and psychological wounds. It's when we gaslight ourselves because our own reality is too hard to confront. It's also used to gaslight others, but usually because we're gaslighting ourselves because we aren't willing to look at our own reality. So there's usually some sort of cognitive dissonance going on whereby I can't handle your emotional state or what's going on for you because it makes me too uncomfortable. It makes me have to look at something that I don't want to look at. So I'm going to tell you to look on the bright side or be happy or just think positive or have gratitude, or it could be worse. Other people have a harder situation, so count your blessings or whatever it is, because I want you to feel better because you're not feeling good makes me uncomfortable. And so that's how we utilize spiritual bypassing to block other people. It's not actually helpful when those kinds of phrases are used because it's not really hearing and sitting with and holding space for what the other person is experiencing. If you are in a situation where it is too emotionally hard for you to be with someone else's emotions, a healthier thing to do would be to excuse yourself. Just say, I need a moment to be in a space where I can be supportive and I don't want to be harmful. It's acknowledging that you are having a reaction that you need to process so that you don't have your emotional baggage showing up when you're trying to be there for somebody else. Again, it's still acknowledging emotions. It's not shoving them away. It's not pretending they're not there. It's honoring them and honoring the other person's emotions, honoring your own emotions, and showing up to that and engaging it rather than trying to make it go away and pretend that it's not there or that it shouldn't be there and doubly compounding on the problem. Anyway, I went down a little bit of a track there. You can tell I'm passionate about this. This shows up a lot because it's that whole law of attraction idea that's become distorted into, like, if you think positive, you'll attract positive. And I'll get into how that actually works a little bit later, because there is something to like energy attracts like energy. But you're not going to attract something if you're not being that, and ignoring reality won't allow that evolution to happen because you're not able to engage what's actually happening in your life, whether it's internal or external. Just pretending it's not there isn't going to work. Another issue is just the generalization of negative and positive. That's another binary situation, which we tend to have a lot of subconscious things around where we are making assumptions about what is negative and what is positive and what fits in the negative bucket and what fits in the positive bucket. And if we're avoiding the negative things, whatever we've associated, oftentimes without really defining it, we've associated with negative. We're like, oh, well, that's negative, so I'm going to attract bad things. So negative starts to equate to bad. And then we're like, well, I don't want to attract bad things, so I better stop it. and that just doesn't work. Like, just telling yourself, just stop it. Like, how often has that actually sustainably worked? Yet we still do it. I mean, at least I know I do. I frequently will catch myself going, well, stop it. Nope, Val, that doesn't work. Let's actually dig into this for a second. There is a hilarious Mad TV sketch on this very topic. It is called Stop It with Bob Newhart. I'm going to link it in the show notes because it is a great watch if you need a good laugh. I often think of it when I catch myself doing that and I need to take a moment to stop taking myself so seriously and give myself a little grace to be able to say, hey, oh, look, I did it again. Because we all fall into some of these patterns because they're so prevalent in our society. Now, that veers more into the way our self-talk can be toxic. But shifting back to the interpersonal dynamics and places you may see toxic positivity in practice, in relationships or in social dynamics, are if someone's been diagnosed with an illness, saying, God never gives you anything that you can't handle. Or if someone is grieving the tragic loss of a loved one, saying something like, everything happens for a reason. Or saying to someone who has experienced a traumatic event to appreciate how much stronger they'll be because of this experience. Those are not helpful things because they emphasize, well, let's look on the bright side. And it doesn't acknowledge the real pain and hurt that is going on for that person, the grief that is going on for that person. And it imposes a positive lens that isn't really appropriate. Because for one, it's not that person's place to do that. Another area that this has been highlighted, especially recently, by the response of many in the wellness field, dismissing racism with things like, you're responsible for your reality, and if you raise your vibration, you won't attract this kind of energy. I'm going to link a really great article called Spiritual Bypassing and How Wellness Excuses Racism from Elle Australia in the show notes, because I highly recommend checking it out because it dives into that particular aspect really thoroughly. I've compiled a list of general signs of toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing so that you can notice if you're doing any of these or if someone else is doing it so that you can show up to it in a healthier way. They are overemphasizing the positive and avoiding the negative, being overly idealistic, ignoring unpleasant history and systems of privilege, denying others or even your own lived experiences. As a white or otherwise privileged person, absolving yourself of personal responsibility in situations of injustice. Again, back to saying you're responsible for your own reality instead of acknowledging that there's real injustice happening. Being overly compassionate. And I know that one might sound a little odd, but it has a lot to do with what I was saying previously of I want you to feel better because I need to feel better, because you're not feeling good makes me uncomfortable. So that I want to care for you so that you are better, you are fixed because of how I'm feeling inside. But you can notice it if you are overly focused on helping other people and there's a pressure or a need to fix and help. This ties a lot into another area that I talk a lot about, which is codependency. And there's probably a lot of connection there, interestingly enough. Finally, pretending that everything is okay when it's not. And whether that's everything is okay in a societal context, or everything is okay internally, or in the home, or wherever, instead of acknowledging that actually it's not okay. Because sometimes it's not okay. Sometimes it's not okay. And when we ignore and deny that it's not okay, it can exacerbate very strongly the problems that are creating the not okayness. Hopefully, it's obvious why this is such an important topic. It's something that is stunting our growth. It stunts our growth as individuals. It stunts our growth as a society. And to be able to show up for ourselves with love and to be able to show up for other people with love, a core component of that is honoring where we are, honoring the fullness of ourselves. I'm personally really passionate about this subject, not just because of my industry and because I am someone who is of support to other people, and it's critical that I am able to show up in a way that is supportive and helpful rather than harmful. But also the issues of toxic positivity and avoidance of emotions have deep roots in my childhood. I did a podcast episode recently on the podcast Relatively Damaged. It's not out yet, but I will be sharing it when it is. So if you are not on my email list, be sure to get on it. But one of the things that we talked about was my childhood. And I've shared here before that I grew up in a family impacted by the disease of alcoholism. My father has given me permission to share with you all because it's important to him that his story also be helpful. But I'm not here to tell his story. I'm here to share my relationship to this. But I do like to be clear when it comes to something like alcoholism, it's really important that the person who defines themselves as an alcoholic is allowed to be anonymous, because there's a lot that goes into that experience, unless they choose not to be kept anonymous. But that's not for anyone else to say. And it's also not for anyone else to identify anybody else as an alcoholic. That is a self-diagnosed disease. So I want to emphasize those things because I think they're important. For me, when I was 8, my parents came to me and said, okay, you're dad's going to AA, mom's going to Al-Anon, and you're going to go to Alakid. And I was like, I don't understand. I don't even know what any of this means. 'Cause my dad wasn't an angry drunk. He just went away. It was a numbing mechanism, and an effective numbing mechanism. He was what would be called a functioning alcoholic. And so when the drinking stopped, the emotions weren't being numbed anymore. And I got to watch my dad learn how to deal with emotions. And sometimes it was scary, and sometimes it was upsetting. But I had the privilege of watching that evolve and learning happen, because it did. And work be done to engage emotions and process emotions. So I saw what happens when you numb them. And I saw the difference when you don't. And that was powerful. It's not something that I understood necessarily as a kid. I can pretty much guarantee you I didn't understand it as a kid. It was just living it, right? But as an older person, and even as a teenager, I took something away from that. When I was in 7th grade, I was depressed. It didn't exhibit in a conscious way, but it was something that I was sick all the time. I didn't feel good. And would go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, there's nothing wrong with her. And eventually she suggested taking me to a psychiatrist. I was going through a lot of change at the time. I mean, obviously hormonal stuff, but I changed schools. I was going to a school across the city from where I lived. It was very different. There was a lot of things going on. And I would go to the psychologist and we'd talk. And I had this sense that he was waiting for me to say something extreme enough that he could prescribe medication. Eventually that happened, and he prescribed, or wanted to prescribe me, Prozac. And I said no. I didn't want to take anything that was potentially addicting, because I was terrified of becoming addicted to anything. But I also didn't want to numb my emotions. And I know that there are absolutely times when medication is important and necessary. For me, it felt like if I wasn't feeling the yucky feelings, how could I deal with them? But having had a space to talk and recognize that there was something going on for me, I was able to start engaging it. And I was lucky to have a community where I felt like I could be safe to process. And that work began. But that was the first place where I was able to say, no, I need to feel the emotions so that I can engage them. The following year, I took a psychology class, and in the textbook, it said that emotions are neither negative nor positive. And on a test, there was a question that said, anger is A, positive emotion, B, negative emotion, C, neither. Well, I selected neither, and the teacher marked me incorrect. And I asked him why, because I had put what was in the textbook. And he said that he didn't care what was in the textbook. Anger is a negative emotion. And I don't know if that's when it became a thing for me, but I was not happy about that. And I thought it was also wrong, given all of these previous experiences that I'd had. Finally, I was on a networking call a few months back, and when I said that I was a life coach, one of the other people on the call made an assumption that I would agree with him when he said he had a colleague who had had COVID and had overcome it with positive thinking. And I was appalled, because while I do think that lowering your stress levels and having a forward-focused attitude can be helpful in boosting your immune system, I do not think that just having a positive attitude will cure you of any kind of illness. And so it kind of renewed my passion to engage this subject, because that's harmful. That's one of the big things that is creating a lot of harm right now. And then, of course, digging into work around anti-racism and seeing the harm that's being done there with that kind of attitude of ignoring real injustices. If you ignore something, you can't do anything about it. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that has gangrene and hoping that it will go away if you just can't see it. No, eventually you're going to saw your arm off. Like, you can't just ignore that. I believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. That means actually having the human experience. So when taking a spiritual perspective on this, trying to block the human experience with enlightenment or spiritual ideas or ideals, I think defeats the purpose. I think it defeats the purpose. It doesn't allow us to grow. It doesn't allow us to evolve. Avoiding, repressing, or idolizing living above emotions, i.e. the human experience and the struggles in life, isn't the point. It's missing the point. And it's not that spiritual practices themselves are problematic. It's when we use them in a way that covers up problems, like that Band-Aid, instead of working on these actual issues, the reason the problems are there in the first place. So if we don't acknowledge emotions, if we don't engage those uncomfortable places, we can't learn from them. We can't grow from them. Emotions tell us that something is up. Something is going on. And yes, sometimes it exists within us. Sometimes it is our thinking. But there are also a lot of things that matter outside of us. And these so-called negative emotions, the emotions that are uncomfortable to have, that feel yucky, that aren't warm and fuzzy, they point to where work is needed, inner work or outer work or both. They tell us where we need to set boundaries in our life and where activism is called for, not just where we need a new perspective. I think that it is really helpful to connect with other people, to be able to see beyond our own brain and our own programming, to engage something in a healthy way. And I still, going back to the spiritual components, like I love the saying of where two or more are gathered together, there I will be in the midst. It's an acknowledgement that one filter, which is what our brains are, they're filters for everything that we've experienced in life. One brain is only going to give us one perspective, where if we have more brains and we listen to each other and really take in the experience, and not brains that are all from the same background and from the same spaces, because then you get a lot of repetition, but diverse brains, diverse experiences, you can get a more holistic picture of what might actually be the real truth in the matter. And that's not the same as having a guru or having someone who says, this is the way it is, or saying, this is what's in my head, tell me if it's right or wrong, right? That's not the same at all. There's this desire for quick fix solutions, and it certainly sells. Like, motivational conferences, they seem easier. They're more comfortable, less messy, like go get inspired, and then you're going to go back and it's going to be amazing. But when you get back into life, into all of the things that make up the world that you live in, the reality that you live in, all of those triggers are still there. All of those dynamics are still there. So if you don't engage them, they're going to stay there. Change and growth are complicated. They are comfortable processes. They are messy. And anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. There are a lot of shoulds that push us into spiritual bypassing as women. And I've definitely found it heavily emphasized both in motherhood, embrace this time. It'll go by so fast. Cherish every moment, like as though it's not awful to hold space where your child is having a meltdown or deal with withholding poop or not going to sleep and being absolutely exhausted. Those are real things and they're hard. And when we're like, oh, just embrace it all, like that ignores it. As well as also in the entrepreneur space, the online entrepreneur space, especially with a lot of influencers who push the idea that they have made their money by thinking positive. And if you just think positive enough like them, if you just have the right mindset like they do, then you will be able to earn the money that they earn, not acknowledging the things that are in place for them that allow that to be possible. Now, that is not to say that someone can't climb their way up, the bootstrap thing, but it's not all mindset. And I know that might sound a little strange coming from someone who is known by a lot of people as like a mindset coach. It's not all mindset. The mindset part is doing the work to make sure that you're not in your own way so that you can more effectively engage the actual external obstacles, the real things in your life. And so when people ignore those things and they emphasize, well, if you're not making money, you must not actually be that enlightened. Or if you're not making money, you must not actually be that great at what it is that you do. It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And it's a way of using this toxic positivity to shame people, to gaslight people. So that's a lot about what is not pleasant and the problems with toxic positivity. I talk about this with my dear friend Lisa Zaratny on her Positively Living podcast. So I'm going to link that in the show notes as well. But to wrap up this episode, I do want to talk a little bit about what does healthy positivity look like? How do we focus on positive without being toxically positive? And because there's nothing wrong with being positive. Like that's not a problem. It's when it's used as an avoidance tactic. So the most important thing, first and foremost, is acknowledging emotions. Just like you would do with a kid, where if they're having an upset, if they're acting out, if something's going on there, you know that there's something underlying that. There's an emotion they're processing. So being able to help them identify that emotion is important. Same thing goes for you. If something is going on, if you're more irritable, if you're wanting to avoid things, if you find yourself being obsessive about something or trying to look on the bright side or anything like that, take a minute to acknowledge what the feeling is that's going on, what's happening that deserves your attention, and validate it, knowing that there's a reason it's there. There's a completely valid reason that you are having that emotion. It might not be the surface thing. It might even be a pattern that you have going on of someone says this thing and you go, oh, well, that means that they don't think very highly of me. And that's not true at all, but you had an emotion about it. Okay, that's normal, especially if you've had a situation in the past where people weren't very nice to you. It's normal to make an assumption that someone's not being nice and being mean to you if that's happening. If you are in a corporate space and constantly getting the energy of you don't belong here, which women do, then of course you're going to struggle with feeling like an imposter because you're being constantly told you don't belong here. You're an imposter. Like, it's not said in those words, but it's not you. That's being picked up because we're social creatures from everything around you, from the environment. And oftentimes it's very difficult not to have that get internalized. So when you can acknowledge the emotion and you can look at where it's coming from and go, okay, this makes sense, then you can start to engage it. And whether that means that you are engaging it by activism, by voting, by sitting down and having a conversation with somebody, by speaking out about it and standing up for yourself, or even just knowing that it's not okay and looking for something better, knowing that you deserve something better. Those are all helpful things to do because you acknowledged that you were having emotion and you validated that it is a real thing. And that goes a long way to show yourself love rather than ignoring what you're feeling. Asking for help. That's also important. Any of those self-love things that you can do. And I have a whole episode about relearning self-love. It's episode 11. And building a relationship with yourself so that you can be a friend to yourself instead of gaslighting yourself. As far as thinking positive, what I like to do is look at it kind of like math. Instead of going, I have -3. -3 sucks. I don't want -3. -3 is going to bring me bad things. It's going to attract more negative to me. So I'm going to pretend I don't have -3. I'm going to think 10. And if I think 10 enough, then I will find 10 and 10 will just happen. And that doesn't work. It doesn't work in math. It doesn't work in real life. But going, okay, I have -3. I want 10. What do I need to add to -3 to get to 10? What do I have available to me right now to move me toward 10? Where could I go to get closer to 10? Who could I talk to that might have something to add so that I can achieve another step towards 10? So that's how I think about healthy positivity. It's looking forward rather than trying to pretend that now doesn't exist. It's going, okay, we have now, we have where we are. What's the next indicated step? What's the thing that I do next? So it comes to acceptance of what is, being with what is, loving yourself enough to hold space for what is, loving yourself enough to hold space for yourself so that you can then hold space for other people. And understanding ourselves allows us to be more open to other people being themselves and knowing the difference between ourselves and other people and taking in other ideas so that we can be more expansive and we can see beyond and we can grow bigger. There are some struggles around knowing, what that 10 is. And that's another area that we run into where, well, I don't know what I want. All I know is I have -3 and I don't like it. It feels yucky to be in -3. I don't know what 10 looks like. Well, you don't have to. You can start with the feeling. You can start with imagining what would 10 feel like. If you didn't have -3, what would you have if you didn't feel in -3? And so you can use those emotions to go, okay, this is what I would like it to feel like. Now, what would move me in that direction? How could I bring more of that into my life? So that's another way of using a healthy positivity. Instead of ignoring what is, we build on what is. And that's positivity. In the last episode, episode 18, I do a coaching session with a woman who we dig into some of this with. So if that's resonating for you and you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to that episode, because we dig into that. And we also talk a little bit about gratitude, because gratitude is another place that can be toxically positive. It's a way of making it okay. And there's, in the book of Joy by the Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, they talk a little bit about emotions and when we feel bad. And there's the tendency to go, well, I don't have it as bad as that person, to try and make ourselves feel better. But when we make those kinds of comparisons to try and make ourselves feel better, but when we make those kinds of comparisons, it doesn't actually help us. What helps is knowing that we're not alone, knowing that there are other people too who are experiencing a hard time. And that is actually the root of what helps us feel better, because our stress resilience, and there's neuroscience around this too, our stress resilience is based in connecting with other people. If we are not willing to acknowledge where we are and what's going on, it makes it very hard to authentically connect with other people, to be vulnerable, to have the courage to say I'm hurting, and to be with that and ask for support or be available to someone else when they need support. And that's what they talk about, is in those times, knowing there are other people too. It doesn't matter how much they're hurting or whether they have it worse than you or better than you. It's just knowing that you're not alone. You're not alone in this. And to be honest, that's always true. You are never alone. We're not all that unique. I know there are times when it's like, well, you are unique. You're your own unique person. There's no one like you in the world. But your experience of life isn't that unique. You are not alone in what you are experiencing. There are other people there. I think that's really helpful to know, to have the courage to be able to take a look at some of those harder things to look at, those emotions that we may not want to engage. I like the term coddywampling, and you may have heard me use it before. Coddywampling is British slang for walking intentionally in an unknown direction. And I like that because it takes a lot of pressure off. I like it because it recognizes being intentional is the key. And to be intentional takes knowing yourself. It takes being present with yourself, which means being present with what's going on emotionally for you so that you can grow. There are 2 other episodes I'd like to point you to if you want to take the next step, if you want to explore moving forward, or as I like to say, failing forward, because I think that really is that living process, that human process of growing. We often learn by falling down, is episode 9 and episode 10. Episode 9, I talk about that process of failing forward and give the system that I use to grow and move forward. So what does healthy positivity look like? I talk about it in that. And then episode 10 is about change and getting comfortable in the uncomfortable, because being human is uncomfortable. And I've said it earlier, and I'm going to say it again. It's uncomfortable. It's messy, and we're not meant to do it alone. And the more you can be okay with where you are and have the courage to show up to yourself and love yourself no matter what's going on, to release that toxic positivity, that self-shaming that goes along with that, and to fully embrace yourself and allow yourself to be vulnerable. And that can be hard when being vulnerable was not safe for you at some point in your life. Maybe it doesn't feel safe now. Finding a space where you can feel safe being vulnerable is important, because you deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be loved. And you deserve all that from yourself as well as from people around you. And you deserve that whether you're feeling positive or negative or somewhere in the muddy middle, as my friend Lisa likes to say. You deserve that. And you deserve a life that you love. If I can be of support to you with that, if you are looking for support in a safe space to honor where you are and to grow to where you want to be, that is what I'm here for. And I invite you to hop on a call with me. Calls with me are always no pressure. I am there for you to support you in your discernment, not to push you into one way or the other, but to hold space for you hearing your inner wisdom without any toxic positivity. So if you're looking for that, there is a link in the show notes to hop on a free call with me, and I would love to talk with you. See you next time. Thanks for listening. I so appreciate you being here. If you got something out of today's episode, please share it. Leave me a review, take a screenshot, and post it on social with a shout out to me. Send it to a friend or, all of the above. Want to hang out more? Join me on Instagram. Or better yet, get on my mailing list to make sure you don't miss out on anything. And remember, your possibilities are as unlimited as you are. Allow yourself to shine, my friend. The world needs your light. See you next time.